Hello, everybody. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us for this second digital launch of the Global Education Monitoring Report. Last Friday, we launched the youth version of the report, and we are excited to be holding this event today, that so many young people from around the world can actually take part in the discussion. I am Manos Antoninis. I am the director of the Global Education Monitoring Report, and I'm going to share a bit of background for those of you following about the report before passing over to Salam Al-Nukta, who is the report's youth advisor. And she will be moderating the discussion with this great group of young people that we have with us today. For those of you who are new to us, the Global Education Monitoring Report is an independent report that is published every year by UNESCO. And we have a mandate by governments to monitor progress in education in the Sustainable Development Goals. That means that it is up to us to examine evidence coming from all sorts of different sources to assess the progress that countries are making on the promises they made in 2015. Our report every year looks at a different issue, and this year we looked at accountability in education, which means we have tried to identify who is responsible for delivering education of good quality and what happens when they actually give an account, when they report back to the rest of us about whether they fulfilled their responsibilities. Every year we go at great length to show the different challenges that arise in education all over the world. And when you identify challenges, people want to know who is responsible and how we can fix these problems. This year, we highlight the role that everyone can play in improving education. And we pay particular attention to the role of youth, to the role of students who can hold governments to account for delivering a good quality education. And we will hear more about that from our panelists on this Google Hangout. The media also helps by investigating stories, investigating wrongdoing, also cases of corruption. Civil society can be a powerful watchdog that ensures governments can uphold their education commitments. But while we all have a role to play in improving education, we shouldn't forget that governments ultimately bear the primary responsibility, because they are the bearers of the duty to respect the rights to education. And this is why we have launched, together with the launching of the Youth Report, a campaign that tries to make sure that this right is not just on paper, but is actually enforced in all countries in the world. Right now, 1 in 2 countries do not do so. And citizens in those countries should be able to take their government to court if they violate their education rights. There is a link on this events page that you can actually, that brings you to our campaign. And we invite you to join us because we really need your help. I would like now to hand over the word to, and the microphone to the Special Rapporteur of the United Nations on the right to education, Dr. Boly, who will share a few remarks with us.
Thank you very much. And congratulations for this pertinent initiative to UNESCO. And firstly, let me say how delighted I am to be joining such a wonderful group of active youth activists for education. Youth play a vital role holding governments to account for providing equitable and quality education. I work every day promoting the fact of right to education, which has been universally recognized since the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. It says that every individual, irrespective of race, gender, nationality, ethnic or social origin, religion or political preference, age or disability, is entitled to a free elementary education. The new youth version of the GMA report we are launching today shows that nearly all countries recognize the right to education through international and national law it means little in reality in many countries. The report tells us about every country has ratified at least one international treaty illustrating its commitment to the right to education. In practices, the right to education is only legally supported in 55% of countries. And if we can't take legal action when our right to education is denied, the right risks being reduced to empty rhetoric. It ends up being worth little more than the paper it's writing on. And really, today is 3,263 young people who are not meeting their right to education. This is a huge work. Human rights system can be complex for non-legal experts, so there is an urgent need to decodify the right to education so it can be used easily. And this where having an active, informed, and engaged youth movement can be crucial. We need your help, you youth, to advocate for the right to education, to raise awareness among other youth that is their right, and empower them to claim it. We need your voices to help remind governments of their legal obligations. This includes being part of social movement and protests, getting involved with higher education governing boards and committees to demand changes where it's needed, and writing to ministers or presidents and government officials to demand action, including for translating the right in national laws. The GMA reports a accountable campaign is a fantastic opportunity for youth to come together and demand action to change. I encourage you all to visit the campaign website, sign the petition, get involved online, and sharing also your voice through the video campaign. For me, for my part, I promise to do what I can as a special rapporteur to the right to education, to share those messages with decision makers and make effectiveness of the right to education in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Boly, and I think maybe now Salam, our youth advisor, can take over as the moderator of this Google Hangout.
Hi, I'm Salam, the global activist for education and women's rights, and also proudly the GEM Report Youth Advisor based in Syria.
Good.
By asking some general questions of our talented group of panelists, but really, we want to hear from all those listening, so ask away in the comments box below and we'll take your questions. Please do take part on Twitter using the hashtag whose account. So, Helge, the new youth version of the GEM report shows that the voice and energy of students is really important to hold government to account for their education commitments. As the current president of the European Students' Union, can you tell us a little bit about your organization and how students' councils and unions can champion the right to education?
Thank you, Salam. Yeah, I can start off by telling a bit about my organization. First, I would like to make a little disclaimer, and that is that we represent students. And even though students are predominantly youth, we're not only youth. We represent a lot of students that have already a whole professional life laying behind them, and that have started second education. We have people that got into higher education at a later stage. We have people that are re-educating themselves, lifelong learners. And in some countries, and the average age of a student is even higher than 25 years. So we still feel the need to talk about, say, youth involvement, because youth are incredibly important in shaping the future. But I think that it's also important to bear in mind that students are not only youth. Student is a very varied group of individuals, which is also something that is important in higher education, because inclusivity, accessibility are some of the main challenges that we face in higher education. Now, I represent the European Students' Union, which is an umbrella organization of 39 different countries with 46 different student unions that operate on a national level. Many of those also have student councils on a local level on campus, who again are their members. So the structure functions in this way that everything feeds up from the grassroots level and up to us, that is representing the voice, which is expressed at our General Assembly by making our policies, electing our representatives, and those voices we then represent on a European level. So we do not go down on the campus level, but rather are there, say, messengers higher up, and thereby trying to influence European processes, but also things that happen on a global level. For us, students are not only there to keep decision makers accountable in the legal sense, as if that when our right to education is being violated, that we need to take, say, these decision makers to court. But it's even more important in the sense that students should be able to shape their own education, be able to influence the decisions that are being made in order to make higher education in a highest possible quality. And in my opinion, things like diversity and accessibility are some of the main is what has to be the main foundation of every higher education system that wants to be of a high quality. Now, in the legal sense, and in the and what we're talking about in holding our higher education systems accountable, I think that a very important right to fight for is the right to be represented by a democratic decision-making body of students. So for us, it's very important that student representation is not about a student being represented, but that the students are being represented. And to achieve that, you need organizations that are independent from their governments, that are democratically run, and that are open for all students. We expect all the unions that we collaborate with outside of Europe to also uphold these rights. And we know that not everywhere in the world these kinds of organizations are able to operate. In many countries, it is being said that you have students' representation, but that these students are either being cherry-picked, or they're allowed to sit in councils for themselves, or being able to, say, offer an opinion, but not necessarily able to be part of decision-making, which is, in our opinion, something that is needed. Students is the biggest interest groups in all higher education institutions. And students are also the only ones that experience how their education is, if it is of high quality, if it is accessible. And the only way to really use this knowledge, this expertise, is also to be directly part in decision making, which goes all the way up to to the highest board of universities, or to be sitting around a board with the governments themselves. And it's possible to put that in law. Already a couple of countries have it, like a minimum representation in decision-making bodies and institutions. In my home country of Norway, that is 20% in all decision-making bodies. I know of countries that have an even higher representation, but this is something that students should be advocating for, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, Helge. Now, Vivian, can you hear us? Vivian? Vivian, I hope you're still there. Okay, let's go to Dalen until Vivian is here. Dalen, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. So you played an integral role in South Africa's largest student protest since the 1970s. Can you tell us a bit about the 2015 Fees Must Fall protests? What role did social media play in the initial success of the campaign?
Happily. First, I just want to say it's a real honor to be here and to be speaking on a platform like this. And further education monitoring report does is really important. So the Fees Must Fall protest in South Africa started in response to the receipt of quite significant South African universities for the year 2016. So protests started at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg in October in response to a 10.5% tuition fee institution for the following year. Within a week, every university in the country had erupted in protest. The protest dealt with various issues at different campuses, largely around tuition, but over things like automation of workings of campuses, things like language policies at different campuses. Yeah, so the protest got a range of issues. Can you hear me right?
Not very well.
Dalen, do you think you can wear a microphone, or perhaps I can't receive a clear voice?
Okay. Can you hear me all right now?
Yes, it's better.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Happily. So the role played by social media in the protest was the protests, because they were developed reasonably organically at campuses across the country, and they weren't centrally organized. It meant that social media played a key role in allowing students to communicate about ideas and reach consensus around issues that otherwise they wouldn't have been able to. It also played a key role in ensuring that people could mobilize, share information about when things like mass meetings, protests, and other things were happening. And it played a pretty integral role in just, allowing organization to happen across different processes around the country. Yeah. Would you like me to repeat a little bit about the background of the protest, or did you hear enough of that earlier on?
Excuse me?
Could you hear enough when I was talking about the background history of the protest? Would you like me to repeat it?
I'm afraid I'm not receiving a clear voice. Could you please repeat your question?
I was just asking if you'd like me to repeat what I was saying before that about the history of the protest and how it began.
Yes, please. Could you do that briefly, especially that your sound is clearer?
Happily. So the Fees Must Fall protest in South Africa started in October 2015 in response to a series of significant tuition fee increases at South African universities for the year 2016. So it started at the University of last month in October in response to 10.5% increase of the institutions following that. Within a week, every university campus in the country had erupted in protest over a variety of issues, mostly around tuition fees, but also around things like the exploitation of workers on campuses and language policies. There was a second round of protests in 2016 around similar issues, specifically consolidated around the right to free higher education and access to higher education. And the role of social media was one of ensuring that organization and mobilization could take place and be organized, and that there was a consolidation of consensus around issues like this.
Thank you so much, Dylan, for sharing this information with us. Now, Victoria, we're coming to you. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Victoria, you've been appointed Youth Ambassador for the Education 2030 Steering Committee tasked with identifying the global priorities for reaching the global education goal. Why is it so important to have a youth advocate on the committee, and how do you see your contributions making a difference to the decisions and working methods of the group?
Thank you, Salam. As you said, the SDG Education 2030 Steering Committee is the global coordination mechanism in charge of the SDGs 4 on quality education. And this high-level forum brings together ministers and other education stakeholders to decide the future of children and youth across the world, and to make important decisions like how to make education accessible to over 263 million children who are out of school, and how to also address the issue of the education for many more millions of children who are in school. So I believe that as youth, we are the trustees of posterity, and these conversations cannot go on without involving us. So there is no better way for us to convey our interests, our values, our ideas, and our voices than to be included at the decision-making table, which is why I think that the steering committee has made a very good choice by including the youth voice in its conferences and also events. And I also believe that as young people, we no longer passive contributors, rather we want to be decision makers, and we want to be active partners in development. So I believe that young people should be seen rather as, partners in development and not just as beneficiaries. So that is why I believe that as a young person, it's very, very crucial for me to be at the at such a high level forum.
Thank you, Victoria. Is there anything you would like to add?
Yes, so as the youth representative to the steering committee, I am particularly involved in communications and advocacy within the steering committee. And basically what the advocacy and communication group does is that it is the driving wheel of the steering committee. It decides what the steering committee should be paying attention to, what it should be investing its time and resources to, and it also decides how the steering committee should bring the important stakeholders together and in what direction the conversation should be going towards. And that means that as a youth representative in this working group, I am responsible for the developing communication and advocacy actions based on the findings of the steering committee, and also to propose action for increased political commitment to education. So I believe that it is not just enough for us to keep paying lip service to education, for us to come together at conferences and discuss problems. Now is the time for us to focus on transparency and accountability in education. Who is responsible for who? What should be the next step? So that is what the steering committee looks at. It looks at how to divide responsibilities. You look at who is going to take responsibility for what, and that is why it's constantly meeting. The last steering committee meeting was earlier this year in New York, and the next steering committee meeting will be coming up next February in Paris. So the steering committee would be looking at progress made from last year, and also where it is right now and in what direction we're going to. And in fact, the GEM-Youth report is on the top agenda of the steering committee. The steering committee will be looking at how to, place accountability at the center of the SDGs 4.
Thank you, Victoria. I think let's check with if Vivian is still with us for the last time. Vivian, can you hear us? Vivian? I'm afraid Vivian must have been disconnected. We've covered a lot of the ground already, and now now I really want to hear from those listening into the discussion. So let's take our first round of the questions. Here we go. Dr. Boly?
Yes.
This question is for you. As someone working on this every day, what do you think the main sticking points are from government's perspective that are holding back the right to education from being implemented in national law?
Yes. Thank you very much. I think really the problem is that many countries are taking the laws, but the laws is not known by the youth and also the civil society and the people of the ground. They don't know what this law means. This is the first problem. The second problem also is how to implement this law. Because if you don't understand what that means, how people can implement it, and how people can organize themselves to defend also their right to education. I think for me it's very important to ask governments, first of all, to be sure that the law is equitable and also well understood by the population. It's very important also to see the free access of education from the pre-primary to primary and also secondary, and progressively for higher education. Because I'm really listening the people from South Africa who are talking about free education for higher education, and it's very, very important for African countries today. First of all, to be sure that free education is an inclusive education also, because it's a problem of access of people who are with disability. It's very important for vulnerable people to have also opportunity for that. But sometimes you can see there is no policies and also special actions to help those people to meet their right. And this is really the main comment I want to tell you, because today I'm in Ivory Coast, and it's really, I think it's a wonderful country on the law. They have taken a new law in 2015, and in this law, it says that education became obligatory. That means each family has to put his child at school. This is a wonderful step for Africa to move, and it's an example, because now government is giving us money to be sure that they can have schools near the rural area, and also they take some actions for girls, women to be access to accede to schools, but also to meet their right of education. And this is really, and also people who are living with disabilities. It's really wonderful to see those kind of policy in a country, and also special actions in this perspective. It's a good example for West Africa, and I think West Africa countries must see how Ivory Coast is really doing today on this way.
Thank you so much, Dr. Boly. Dylan, we're coming back. A question for you.
Yeah.
Well, there have been recent updates on the fees must fall protest. How has the movement continued to build momentum and the pressure to ensure equal access to higher education for all learners, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds?
So the protests began in 2015, and at the end of the protests, towards the end of 2015, there were significant concessions won from the state. But unfortunately, through 2016, the state made quite insignificant progress into dealing with the higher education issues that had been brought up by students. As a consequence, there was a second round of protests in 2016. So in terms of maintaining pressure on the state, students continued protesting. But because students had had a year to talk through and develop ideas and positions on the issues, one thing that was very interesting in the second round of protests was a range of initiatives where, because the state wasn't taking the initiative to deal with issues and design policy solutions to issues, students picked up the slack. So at a couple of institutions, groups of students with a mandate from protesting students put together things like financial models for free higher education, wrote documents and policy analyses looking at how the higher education system issues have developed and what potential solutions could be found to deal with them in the future. So that continued through the protests in 2016, and through 2017, a lot of those initiatives while protests stopped. Students on the whole have otherwise tried to organize a network to try and create a kind of broad network of activists talking about issues and continuing to put pressure on the state in various ways. There have been all kinds of forums with students present, along with representatives from the state, things like the Department of Higher Education, National Treasury, and the Presidency. So students have continued to put pressure on in that form. And yeah, it's more recently there wasn't another round of protests, but those various initiatives putting forward policy proposals have continued.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dylan. Anything you would like to explain further?
No, I'm happy to answer any other questions, but on that front, I think that's fine.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Now back to Helge.
Yeah, hello?
Yes. Well, we'd like to know more about your recommendations. Would you give, what would you give to students who want to get more involved with the decisions being made about their universities?
Okay, did I hear you correctly? Students that want to be better engaged and to be included in decision-making at their universities?
Yes, exactly. That was the question.
Yeah. No, well, at some universities, there are already existing decision-making bodies for students that are democratic. In those cases, I would get engaged with them and to see how you can involve yourself. Sometimes this means running for elections. Other times it can be being part of working groups, committees, task forces, panels, and so forth. But in many places, you have to establish organizations yourself. This goes for campuses, countries that have no student representative bodies or councils, and in some places you have some student representatives, but that are flawed, that are either corrupted or completely run by the university, the state, or they're not included. In those cases, well, there's not so much more to say than you end up having to construct your own. But what I would recommend anyone that will try to build up something from the very beginning is to get in contact with other organizations and unions outside the campus, outside of your country. I strongly believe in student solidarity and to finding support, into supporting each other across borders, and also to make sure to have that capacity building. Latest, for 1 week ago, I was in Ramallah, visiting something called Palestinian Students' Council Forum, which is a Palestinian student union which has been developed over the last 3 years. They are now in a cooperation with our member union from Denmark, and are getting say support in how to build the organization. But within less than 1 year, they're completely running, being on their own feet. I mean, I have been so massively impressed by all the work that's there. I mean, do you gather a group of really engaged students? I think you can achieve a lot. And if not, ask for support outside, and that also goes when there are crackdowns on student organizations, which is way too often the case.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for all the useful recommendations. We also have another question from Madeline. Could you tell us a bit about how and if ESU works with other student unions internationally towards the education goals?
Yes, a couple of years back, well, it wasn't 2.5 years ago, in 2015. This was when I was still active also in the National Union of Students in Norway. ESU took the initiative to a global student meeting called the Global Student Voice in the Norwegian city of Bergen, where we gathered 20 unions from all 5 continents, approximately, say, 3 to 4 unions from each continent, to discuss about what is most important to us. And, well, not really surprised. It was not really a big surprise that many of the things that students care about when it comes to their own education is similar across all borders. It is higher quality, and it is accessibility, which goes for mainly all students groups everywhere. We have been trying to build upon this, and we had also an initiative. You still have a webpage which I can share, but it is globalstudentvoice.org, where we made a campaign called Fund Our Future, which was to highlight, say, the work done by national unions of students all around the world into making higher education more accessible, and to also hold their governments accountable for investment in higher education. Unfortunately, we have been facing some challenges into continuing this, because there is still a planned new meeting for all these student unions, but there are two main challenges. One is that there is a high turnover. Most students that do that study 2 cycles study no more than 4 to 5 years, and therefore student representatives are often not sitting for more than 2 years max. And the other one is funding. We would love to get back to a level as there was a couple of years, as there were years ago when you had global student organizations, but there's no money to be found that can fund such a thing. But hopefully one day there is something like a student voice that can legitimately cover all continents. But there are some other good good regional organizations as well. In Africa, you have something called the All African Students Union, and in Latin America, there's a regional organization called OCLAE. Too bad that I'm not really good in Spanish, so I don't really know the abbreviation, but they exist.
It's okay. Thank you, Helge. Now let's go to Victoria. Victoria, we have actually 2 questions for you. I'll go with the first one. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Can you say how you might be able to carry forward the importance of our campaign on the right to education to those at the steering committee in February?
Great. So I downloaded the campaign and I read it. I find it to be very, very clear of what young people want to see their leaders do. So what I want to do is to present the youth report to the steering committee for endorsement. And I also hope that member states will personally commit to take further steps at the national level. And perhaps as global youth ambassadors who are also part of this conversation, maybe we can all come together to draft a joint youth statement that I can also present alongside the youth report that summarizes everything contained in the report. I also want to find other possible ways in which the campaign can gain better visibility at the national level through member states taking action. I think that having a general statement might not really get us the accountability that we really need, but if we can have the government of Syria, for example, or we have the government of Nigeria commit to say that this is what we want to do in our country, that would really, really be very helpful. And I'm really glad that I won't be doing this alone. I have the support of Dr. Boly, who is a very strong advocate for education. So I also hope to work alongside with her in the steering committee to drive this agenda forward personally with member states. And I also hope to continue to drive the campaign through the use of social media. We've seen for the past few weeks that social media has been a very powerful tool in raising awareness for this GEM Youth Report and also gathering the interest of other young people. I think that young people across the world really need to know what accountability means when it comes to education. And perhaps through social media, we can continue to raise awareness. This should not be a one-time show. This should not be a digital launch that starts and ends here. There should be continuity until the rights that we want to see are enforced. So I also welcome Thank you.
Good.
Victoria, I'm sorry, I just noticed I was muted. The last sentence you said was a bit unclear. Could you please repeat? Last.
So I've said that I will continue to drive the campaign on social media. And finally, I said that I also welcome more ideas from you all. Being the youth voice within the steering committee doesn't mean that I am representing individual interest, but the interest of young people across the globe. So I'm welcoming ideas from you all and from other young people who are joining in the conversation today.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Victoria, so much. We're really proud of you, and we appreciate your efforts. Now, another questions from Timothy. He's asking about the advice you would give to young people listening to you right now, and also want to make real change in their communities. What would you tell them?
So my advice to young people will be to continue to stay active at the local level. I think that for us to achieve accountability in education, we need a bottom-up approach. And even though UNESCO has come up with a report, UNESCO cannot achieve this report on its own. UNESCO needs us young people. UNESCO needs us to call on our government to be accountable. So we can start not only by calling on our presidents, but also looking at the most little government structure in our communities, like our local government representative, our city mayors, and other stakeholders, even the private sector. And to achieve accountability, we need all hands on deck. We need even the teachers to be involved. We need the students who are the beneficiaries to also be involved. So I would say that as young people, let us engage our peers in this conversation, in this campaign. Let us make it an everyday thing until we see that the right that we want is finally enforced.
Well, thank you again. So Luis is saying congratulations on your appointment. And he would like to know the level of involvement of civil society groups and non-profit organizations in the activities of the Education 2030 Steering Committee.
Okay, so within the steering committee, we have different bodies representing different groups. Like we have a representation for young people, we have a representation for civil society, for teacher organization, for UN partners and member states and other networks. And for civil society, the civil society is being represented by Education Above All. And it's an organization based in Qatar, also known to be one of the leading organizations advocating for quality education for all children across the globe. I would ask you to check Education Above All and Education Above All.
Excuse me, Victoria, may I interrupt you, please? Could you please repeat? Your voice was a bit unclear.
Okay, so I was responding to the question from Louis, and I've said that there is a representation for civil society group, and that is by Education Above All. This is a non-profit organization based in Doha, in Qatar. And they are also leading the Advocacy and Communications Working Group.
Thank you so much. Is there anything you would like further to any of the questions that just came to your mind?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, I think this is the last question.
Maybe I could say one thing just to complement Victoria's response. This is Manos again. The Education Above All represents one part of civil society, which are the foundations. But in addition, of course, we should not forget that the civil society in the steering committee is represented by 3 other organizations in addition. Campaign for Education, which is of course an umbrella body, like some of your bodies, for example, like the European Students' Union that represents various countries, and which actually is also a partner of the European Students' Union on other global education bodies that represent the civil society. Is also the Education International, which is the World Federation of Teacher Unions. The Asia Pacific Campaign for Basic Education and Adult Education, ASPE, which represents again a wide range of organizations that are active in Asia and the Pacific for education of adults and non-formal education. But really, and maybe I could help wrap up the discussion by saying that you have really brought to this discussion the depth and wealth of your experiences on the ground from such different perspectives. And I think what we have heard, what Dr. Boly said at some point is people don't know the laws. Add also to what Dylan said, people don't also know the policies. And with the work that you have been doing on the ground, you really raise awareness of the laws and the policies that are there to help you and help those who are in need, who call for better education. And you also don't forget that you don't represent just yourselves, your colleagues, the other students, the other young people, and that is what keeps you on this long and passionate efforts to improve education. And what we learn is persistence and dedication to the cause is what has elevated you as youth representatives from having fought on the ground at the local level and at the national level, now actually has given you the opportunity to be youth voices at the global level, which is incredible. It's a strong message for all of the young people who are with us tonight, but also all the young people you talk to remember that commitment to the cause can actually take you far. And we hope that the campaign that we have launched on the right to education and the need for this right to be enforced and to be justiciable, for all citizens to be able to challenge the governments when they don't live up to their commitments. Well, thanks to your voices, we hope that we would be able, and in particular Vivian's and Victoria's role in this steering committee could be crucial in ensuring that countries listen. Because what we hope that our report is providing to this debate is taking the messages from all over the world, the messages that you, thanks to your voice, you bring to the attention of the rest of the world. We remind the governments that we're watching. We're really taking note of those instances where governments do not live up to their commitments. So I would like to thank you very much. I would like to invite all of you who are listening and all of you who will be reached through the social media to join the campaign, to increase our voice and to make sure that no single country in the world does not make sure that the right to education is not enforced in law and not just written in law. Thank you all very much, and we hope to be seeing you all in the remainder of the campaign and to come up with more ideas about how to hold our governments to account. Thank you very much.